Can you hear me? Test.
Sound check, 1, 2, 1, 2, sound check, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Sound check, sound check. Is that good? All right.
All right, everyone. Thanks for coming in tonight. We'll have, we've got a smaller crew here. It should be, well, I'm not going to jinx us. So thanks for coming, and we'll kick things off. This evening, we've just got really one main task to go through, which is the report and any edits and clarifications we need to add into the draft report for tonight. So with that, I'll kick it over to roll call.
All right. Ooh. Tammy Afonso. See. Oh,
Present.
Janelle Black. You're over here. Allison Budlong.
Here.
Allegra Ann Bushman.
Present.
Andrea Correa.
Here.
Adrian Juarez Cruz. Madonna Feather Cruz. Madonna's not here. Aaron Geary.
Here.
Ross Haas.
Here.
Kathy Hayes. Not here, right? Not yet. Hermit Hernandez is not here. Ana Vallejo.
Here.
Catherine Howell.
Here.
Andrea Loveday Brown is not here. Yvette Minor is not here. Melissa Stewart. Harry Taylor is not here. Nadia Villa, not here. Janine Wilson.
Here.
And Ben Wolf.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Okay, we'll jump into it. So first thing up is the meeting minutes from last time, the review of those. Hopefully everyone already had a chance to take a look at those. Any comments, clarifications, questions on the minutes from the committee? Okay. Then we'll move into public comment. Do we have any blue cards for public comment?
Yep, there's some.
Okay, so public comment, we just have a couple here. Again, limiting to 1 minute each. So first up is Tina Javier, followed by David Grunbaum, followed by Laura Haupt. Tina.
Let me stand up in the back. Okay. Hi, I'm Tina Javier. I'm a parent of 2 children that go to Albert F. Biela Elementary School. And Albert F. Biela is more than just a school. It's a vibrant community that has fostered a sense of belonging and growth for our children. We're heartbroken by the decision, especially when we consider the impact on our kids who are patiently waiting for their new playground, only to know that it is designed for the French charter school. Has the committee truly seen the community we've built here? We're also concerned about the district's priorities. As school sizes shrink and teachers are cut, we're seeing the district staff double. And when we try to call the district, it's impossible to even get a live person. Our kids shouldn't have to bear the brunt of these decisions. We need the cuts to be balanced, and we need our children's future to be prioritized. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Next up is David, followed by Laura, followed by Mary Horan.
Hi, my name is David Benjamin Grunbaum. I'm the parent of a graduate of Montgomery High School and also a current sophomore at Montgomery High School. The biggest reason I'm here today is, obviously Montgomery as a whole group is very disappointed. We appreciate all your efforts. First of all, I should have said that first. But it's very disappointing, the whole thing, especially considering everything we've been through. We are especially disappointed in this business with the committee and, in general, people not recognizing this IB program and that it's not transferable. It's the heart of our community, and we don't understand why this big mistake was made that somebody said, oh, it can just be moved to another school, because that's not true, okay? It takes 2 years to be accredited, and it's not going to happen. There's sort of this statement that somehow this can be done online. Every California student has the right to be taught live, so we don't understand that. So we appreciate your efforts, but we just are, disappointed about the final results. We don't also understand with the rankings, because if you take away that 1 point, all of
Sorry,
a sudden,
David, that's the minute timer.
we thank you for
Thank you.
everything.
Thank you, David. Next up is Laura Haupt, followed by Mary Hohen.
Thank you. I'm a parent of a Montgomery student who is a junior in high school, and I just want to speak to the strength of the community that Montgomery has built in the last 3 years. We are a cell phone free campus, which has made this huge difference. We have an amazing administration, staff, and teachers. We have a Best Buddies program, and my son with an IEP has excelled because of the strength of the teachers. We also have an amazing sports program, and he has become just so in love with distance running, both track and cross country. And it incorporates the whole community. We have the Bill Bradley Track Classic in the spring, and a statewide meet that we sponsor in the fall. And it's just, Montgomery has this history of community and sportsmanship that it can't just be replaced easily somewhere else. Also, it is our neighborhood school, and I
Thank you,
want you
Laura.
to encourage you to
Sorry,
keep
that's
us open. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. And last up is Mary. Thank you.
My name is Mary Horton. Regarding pages 47 and 72 of the report, I believe there should be a challenge and note to the school board that the Consolidation Committee did not have accurate information from the district about Montgomery's International Baccalaureate program for the scoring of Criterion 18 district-wide special programs. Montgomery should have received a score of 1 instead of 2. This change puts Montgomery's ranking score at 32, the same as 2 other high schools. It has only recently been shared that IB schools must be certified by the International Baccalaureate Organization, a process that can take 2 or more years. I attended the January 16th superintendent coffee meeting at Montgomery. I asked Dr. Morales specifically if the IB program could be moved in its entirety in the event of a closure. Dr. Morales responded that she could not guarantee that. Impressively, 2/3 of juniors and seniors at Montgomery are enrolled in the IB program, and it cannot be moved to another site by August of 2025.
Thank you. Unless there's any more blue cards, that is it for public comment. So I would like to, since there were a number of comments that came in, both right now as well as via email regarding the IB program, Dr. Castro, are you able to address the ability to move the IB program, just for clarification?
Okay, I'm basically going to end up repeating what I said at the last meeting, but because it's so easy to get misinformation, I'm actually bringing a document from the International Baccalaureate Organization that I can pass around. So what I basically stated before is the information that we'd received from the International Baccalaureate Organization is that if a number of different criteria were submitted to the International Baccalaureate Organization, And if those criteria were met, that the program could be transferred. I also mentioned, and I cited a precedent for a school that had actually had a similar situation in which the juniors had been transferred from one school to the next when a school had been closed, and those seniors were able to complete the program and graduate. I'm going to go ahead right now and pass out that document to the committee. I think that's basically it. I'm available for questions, but the statement that I put out, and it's one that I've shared broadly, is that the transfer, basically in a sentence, the transfer of the program doesn't automatically mean the closure of the program.
I think if there are questions from the committee with respect to this, we could take a minute to cover those questions.
So I think the question that I immediately have after reading the first paragraph of this, and I think it kind of connects to what one of the speakers was talking about, was it says that they can look at criterion when you submit it about where you're going to move it to or how that's going to look. And you're making that request based on that information. And I think that's the concern, is that we don't know where that would go. And once we determine, so we would still have to wait till the end of February if Montgomery were to be closed, and if the IB program would need to be moved, then we would probably have to create another, maybe not another committee, but the district would have to then figure out where they would move the IB program, then start the application process for it. I think the panic is people will already find another school selection or not be able to complete it. If it does take longer than August 1st, how long does the process take to do that? Because it seems like if Montgomery were to be closed and then we would submit where we would like to move it to, how long does that take?
So I know that Dr. Castro has been in contact with IB, and
Okay.
so we're already in the background working
Okay.
on this. So they know that we don't have a determination yet.
Okay.
And I'll go ahead and let you finish.
Okay.
Dr. Castro.
So we were actually on the phone again with them today. They know that we're going through this process. And so they would be ready for us, understanding that it is priority one for us to keep this program. As a matter of fact, our priority would be to grow this program wherever. If it were to stay at Montgomery or if it were to move, our priority is to expand this program. So they're ready for us to submit any sort of information, whether it be to move the program or to expand it and on the site. They're ready for us to submit whatever information it would be and begin the process of moving the group of certified teachers and whatever additional staff, the coordinator, and possibly the principal if necessary, to keep the program functioning with as little interruption as necessary or possible.
Saying that it can be, we've been guaranteed a fast track and we will get something rolling by fall.
So again, where I was going to go with it, it will actually ultimately be up to the board, the decision about IB. Now, we are doing everything in the background to have things ready, should that be the route that the board goes, because we can't say what program decisions are. But yes, that is the plan, is that we are in line to have everything transfer, should that be the direction of the board.
Okay. I just think that I'm hearing the panic of, I've got a kid in IB, and if it's going to move, there's a sense of, I know that we here can't make these determinations, totally get that. But that we've been given some assurance that if it were to be moved to X site, whatever that might be, that we could get it back on track and rolling, teachers move to that site and kids would then.
And I just want to make something clear, not just but for the entire committee. We have dozens of programs that we're looking at this for. So this would be one of many that we're going to be looking at for whatever elementary, middle, high school, whatever different model may happen. We're working in the background to see that there would be whatever shifts we're going through between now and the end of the year. Minimal interruption, minimal shake up for our students between now and the end of the year, and to have a nice soft landing at the beginning of the 25-26 school year. But to answer your question, yeah, we can understand why people would be pretty freaked out right now. We're just looking to see how easy it would be and how the possibility and what we're finding is that it's viable. Now, guarantees, we can't guarantee anything, right? But yes, it seems viable.
So just a reminder that this is in the context of the report, because that is the only item on the agenda this evening, is the contents of the report. So the information that we provided was correct, and that's why this is included in support of that.
So I guess my question is, since talking about the report, um, maybe I'll wait to hear what the process is for doing that before I kind of jump in with a question or thought pertaining to Dr. Haas's update. So maybe I'll wait to hear about process before I don't want to put the cart before the horse.
Yeah, so maybe just to officially move us to the next agenda item, then we'll move into the review of the report as we get into it here. And maybe I'll kick it off as well. Allison, I know this might be something you were going to go in the path of, but I think this information should be contained within the report. I guess I would propose that this information gets contained into the report so that it's front and center to the board as they're making the decision and understanding the impacts. The understanding here is, yes, it can be moved, but there's an asterisk. A number of things have to happen in order for that to happen. And I would hope that the board could be fully aware of that. So yeah.
Would it be possible to also record like the total number of students that graduated with IB last year, and then the total number of students who might graduate this year, and then the total number who might graduate next year based off of the qualifications and standards that they've met, so that they have a good idea? Like, is it 200 kids? Is it 5 kids? Like, what are we looking at? Think that might be helpful?
Can I speak? I have that information in my email somewhere from our IB coordinator. If you want, I can look, but I don't know if that's appropriate since it's not publicly available, but I can look.
I do think that while including, a statement or information that information was provided to the committee, if this letter was provided and we can include it as part of the report, I think detailed information about the program and how many kids, et cetera, that's information that the staff would be providing to the board as they make their decision versus including that type of detailed information about one program in the report with regards to the recommendation of the committee for school closure. And so those are all questions that the staff will have to answer for the board as it makes its decision, A, whether or not Montgomery is the school that it's going to close, because it might not be. And then B, what the programs are, what those impacts are, and what staff's plans are in order to move those programs if the board decides to do so. Okay. All right, so what I plan to do is kind of walk through the report section by section and stop with each section and just say, hey, are there any comments or questions in this section that we need to incorporate or address? And then just work our way through the report that way. All right. So I'll start with the executive summary. Oh. If you can share screen, that would be great.
I was actually hoping we could start before that because there's a page, the roll call committee members, I had a request. By my name, it says parent. It should read teacher, Santa Rosa Teachers Association and parent, if we could, if that's,
So the reason that it is listed that way is
Mhm.
because you were actually selected as a parent, not as an SRTA member.
oh, okay.
So that is that's the role, your role on the committee is as a parent.
Oh, it's my first time hearing that. Okay. Interesting. All right. I'll stay in my lane, apparently.
It had
Well,
to,
you-
it had
you
to do with
bring-
representation. SRTA was to select so many members, CSEA so many members, and then there were parent and community.
Understood. Thanks.
You obviously bring all of that to the table when you're,
Thank you.
but
I realize you said we don't need to discuss this, but I just wanted to answer your question that this year there are 277 students at Montgomery taking IB classes.
all right. So the first couple of pages of the report just list out all of they list the boards of trustees, the committee members, the advisory support staff and consultants that helped or provided information throughout the process. The table of contents, which will get updated if there are any, obviously, edits to the page numbering from any edits that we make. And then the executive summary really is just a very broad overview of what's in the report, really just trying to focus on those, the main points that they understand, the public and the board understands the context and the recommendations that the board has that will go into more detail when you actually get to the end of the report. So just a large or a quick summary of the recommendations that the committee is making to the Board of Education. So any questions or comments or edits on the executive summary?
I know that it goes into detail on page 79. This is captured, but because it seems like the additionally bullet pointed proposals that the board discussed and voted to approve
Mhm.
are very similar to what's on page 79. I was wondering about the omission of the scenario that kept Santa Rosa Middle School open as a feeder for Santa Rosa High School, Piner, and Elsie. It made it as a bullet point on page 79, but is not a
Okay.
bullet point here.
We can add that. I was just making it a little bit briefer
Sure.
in the executive
be
summary,
concise.
but
Yeah.
yeah. I'll just make sure to copy what's in the back, in the front. Okay. So the background section is just that, trying to provide just a general background with regards to the district, the students that it's educating, grades, et cetera, a little bit about the demographics of the district with regards to the students that are here. It lists the schools within the district. And then just gives a little bit of a history with regards to how the committee was formed, what the criteria were for the selection of committee members and the education code section and the California Department of Education's information with regards to best practices. So it's just, again, just a brief background to kind of set the stage for the remainder of the report.
Are we making comments in the executive summary now, or are we coming back to it?
No,
Or
if
we
you had
skipped
any
over it and-
comments, I'd
You
like
just
to
go
get them
through?
as we go. Sorry. I didn't see anybody else's hands raised, so I
Okay.
moved on to the next piece.
You just keep. So one of the things I noticed is there were a couple caveats that we put on the high schools
Mhm.
around being concerned about equity and not wanting to pit those schools against each other. And I know that information is in the committee meeting minutes for that January 27th meeting, but I feel like those were really important conclusions that we came to, and I would move for those to be included. I also saw that there were some, follow the alternatives that were listed. Um, Only some of them were listed in the summary, and then all of them were listed in the minutes below, or not the minutes, but the description of the meeting below. But so I thought that was a little bit of um, a missed opportunity to really provide all that information in the summary where it could be grabbed, you know, instead of being buried in the report, if that made sense.
Got it. And so I will just take the recommendations in full that's at the end of the summary and move it up to the executive summary so that'll capture all of that detail.
I'm just thinking about how people don't really reach the end.
Very true. Got it. Though I will say that with regards to the other language about equity, et cetera, those weren't part. They're included in the report as information and part of the discussion and those types of things, but it wasn't part of the actual recommendation itself. So I'll figure out some way of tying it up in the executive summary. Okay. Any other questions on the executive summary? Okay. So the background, again, just background information with regards to the district to kind of set the stage for the remainder of the report and what it is that is required by the education code and best practices that are provided by the California Department of Education. So any comments or questions on the background section?
If we notice some typos as we go through, do you want me to just send those to you at the end? Okay. Sorry, I didn't catch them all when we were reviewing.
Summary of committee meetings. And so this is where we're going to be going through and literally it summarized each committee meeting. So the first part of that just starts talking about the fact that the committee met, the number of meetings, that there were Brown Act meetings and therefore they were agendized and published, talks about the various locations where the meetings have been held, and includes a link to the district's board website that has all of the agendas so that anybody that wants to go through that can go through and click on each one of those and look at all the information that was provided, the agendas, meeting minutes, presentations, et cetera. Anything in that brief section before? Okay. So the first meeting on August 19th was an organizational meeting where we really talked about the charge of the committee, talked a bit about the Brown Act and conflict of interests and that information, where we laid out the criteria for consideration and how the scoring worked on those criteria scoring sheets. And so it provides that detail. And then just talked about the fact that the committee discussed the criteria, that there was some question at that time with regards to those three, and makes a note that later in the process, the committee did go ahead and determine to not include those three criteria. And just providing a timeline of the upcoming meetings and the tentative subject of what was going to be discussed. So any comments or edits with regards to meeting one? Okay. Second meeting on September 9th was focused on demographics. The presentation was mostly Rob Murray from the demographics consulting company that this district has hired, and really going through the enrollment, what projections were utilized, looking at historic and projected enrollment numbers. They provided the information by grade span. You have the table that shows what the actual enrollment was and what the projected enrollment was that all of you were provided during that meeting. Information with regards to the free and reduced price meals, the number of students and percentages for each one of the school sites, as well as the ethnicity percentages by school site that was provided at that meeting as well. talked about the housing developments that were slated and that information that was provided, and a bit about the inter and intra-district transfers. And so all of that information is there. Existing classroom counts, capacity. We looked at the utilization rates for the various schools within the district compared to what the projected enrollment is going to be in 29-30, looking at the future, and really just a summary of what that data was with regards to the capacity and what the available capacity was within the district. And then it starts walking down through each one of the criteria that were relevant to the demographic information. And for each one of the criteria, it provides just a brief summary of the relative score and how that was calculated, as well as the rank score and how each one of those was calculated, and then provides effectively those criteria scoring sheets that were provided to you at that time. Includes those here within the report for all of the four. I'm just scrolling through the 5, 6 criteria that we looked at that meeting. And so it's really, again, just a summary of the data that was provided at that time and the scores based on the scoring criteria that we were looking at. So any questions or edits or comments on any of that? Yes.
I know that this is the data that we were given, but I want to comment that it's not accurate. The capacity numbers do not include the building at Montgomery that's currently being built, and the attendance numbers are not from in the last year. They're over a year old.
Yes, it does note that the attendance information is based on the seabeds from the October, because that's the, for 23, 24, because that's the last state certified data that we have. And so we do include that information so that that's noted. Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
I know we talked about this, but when we looked at inters and intras and percentage of students lost at different sites, did we confirm we don't have any exit information about where students went to? Or we did?
We have limited information on that. So if the board is requesting more, we can pull for them what we have.
And we don't, so that would be limited, and we don't know if they left the district or we don't know if which schools they went to, if they stayed in-house?
We do know in-house, it's external that we have limited information on. Internal, we can pull all of that.
And that was, we didn't include it, but as part of the data, the presentation that was provided, it showed, if I'm remembering correctly, X number of schools went from, or students went from this school to that school and from this school. But again, yeah, just internal. They know when you have intra-district transfers.
So if the board members were to ask how many, I'm just saying how many Carrillo students currently have a 95405 zip or 95402 zip code or a 95401 zip code, they could be furnished with that
Yes, that's information that we maintain.
if they ask for it only.
We will have a study session with the board where they will
Okay.
have plenty of time to
That was the
ask for
question.
all kinds of.
Perfect.
Nothing else on that one? Okay. So October 7, 2024 was the meeting on facilities. Eric Oden from Facilities Maintenance and Operation, and then Aaron Jobson from the architects firm that has been working on the facilities, or that worked on the facilities master plan for the district, provided the majority of this presentation. And so we looked at the total needs with regards to the various school sites based on that facility needs or facilities master plan that was completed. They had it in various categories from low, medium, high to highest. And then we also provided information with regards to the allocation that was made for each school site. And so that data is there for you. have the information about the recently completed and historical investments at the various school sites that was presented at that time. There was information, aerial maps provided for all of the school sites so you could see what the permanent buildings were versus the portable buildings. And then we also talked about the support facilities and whether or not they were sufficient to meet the needs of not only the current students, but the potential students if those school sites were at full capacity. Went over the environmental factors. This is the first time that there was a discussion about with regard to the Alcos Priola earthquake fault zone. And so that introduces that topic, and we go back to it again later at a future meeting. Talked a bit about what the implications of that would be on the rankings, given that the district still doesn't have all of the information yet to determine whether or not all of the school sites have active fault lines through them. And then again, for each one of the criteria that were related to facilities, it provides what the criteria is, how the relative score was determined, how the rank score was determined, and then provides the table that includes the data that was provided to all of you at that particular meeting for the scoring criteria. And so in this case, we have criteria 7 that looked at really the facilities, what condition they were in, as well as the construction and modernization projects that were coming. 8 looked at projects that were recently completed. Criteria 9 looked at historical investments, so those that were done in the past. Criteria 10 looked at whether or not the school sites had unique facilities. So these are facilities that couldn't be replicated were a school site to close. Criteria 11 looked at the support spaces and whether or not there were sufficient to meet the capacity or the full capacity of the school site in the future. And then criteria 12 looked at those environmental factors and whether there were any present on a given school site. And 13 looked at whether or not there were any leases that were currently utilizing the properties and potentially generating income, or were there, and that made sense for you guys to consider as you were looking at whether or not the school site had to be, would be closed. So any questions, comments, or edits on that meeting's summary? All right, seeing none, oh, yes.
I forgot to ask, when it shows this data includes projects that are finished now, correct? I don't like when it says of the total needs or, because they're like Montgomery's was, where was it? I just saw it.
So it's a couple of different things. So the one, let me scroll up. So criteria 7 is looking at projects that are coming forward that were showing up in the facilities master plan. So when you're looking at costs and conditions, that's looking at facilities projects that are listed and that some may have started, but that are really moving forward into the future.
Okay.
Then criteria 8 looks at ones that were recently completed. So if there was something that was done within the last, I don't remember the time frame, I think a couple of years with one of the last bonds, it lists those because we wanted to know, hey, if something was just done on the school site, you wanted to know for the future.
Okay, I just wanted that clarification because clearly for Montgomery's building, then also for Biella, who's their school, I mean, their playground just got finished, like just now. So I'm not sure if that was included in this, and Blacktop kind of, it was all included.
Those were approved projects at that time.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. So let me, so the next meeting was October 28th. That was looking at the educational support services. And we had Dr. Castro making the majority of the presentation, but we also had several other staff from educational services, special education, college and career readiness, et cetera, that were also there at that meeting answering questions as they came up for the committee. And so in this case, we looked at, they presented information with regards to the dashboard. And so that includes the 5 state criteria, or 7 state criteria actually, but 5 of them apply to all the schools. 2 of them, the college and career and the graduation rate, don't apply until you hit the high schools. So they provided information with regards to that. They provided information with regards to the special education programs that were available at the school sites, and then just the various programs, classes, and services that are being provided at each one of the school sites. And so you see, we broke it up by grade span. So we provided the information for the elementary schools, the information that's, or the classes, programs, services that are provided at all of the school sites, and then the ones, and then the various offerings at those school sites. And then you also have it for the middle schools and then for the high schools. And so you got a flavor of what all of the schools have versus what the individual programs are that each individual school might have. And we did that for the various grade spans. And then we also did provided that information for the charter schools. Then we started looking at the criteria that were applicable to that. And again, same as the other sections, the relative score information. This one, several of the criteria didn't have rank scores. And so it just notes that no rank score was there. And then you have the scoring sheets or the tables that went along with each one of those, showing what the scores were for each one of that school sites. And so for this particular one, it was really criteria 17 and 18, since the committee made a determination to not include criterias 14, 15, and 16. Any questions, comments, or edits on educational support services? All right, so seeing none there, let me scroll. The next meeting was November 18th. That was fiscal and other implications. And so Lisa and Joel, the Executive Director of Fiscal Services, provided information, kind of an overview on the district's budget, how the budget works with regards to revenues and expenditures and the percentages of all of those, and then started to break down and provide information by school site. So all of the direct costs that are being experienced by each individual school site, and that's broken down into the various categories. There was the potential savings that each school site could potentially generate, and then a further narrowing of that and really looking at what the operating costs were, excluding staff, given that staff are programmed at the district level. We really wanted to find out what those costs were to operate the physical location. And so that information was added. Additional information was provided with regards to transportation, what the bus routes or how many students were being bused, whether they were general education, special education, how many were within the distance for the ability to actually be able to walk to school. And so effectively those that aren't being bused are either walking or being dropped off. And we provided the percentage within walking distance, since the district doesn't actually track how many school students are walking versus being dropped off by parents. And then there was information provided with regards to schools, non-district schools that were within a certain mile radius, from 1 to 10 miles, depending on the grade spans, that might potentially draw students, were one of those school sites to be closed. And so that full list is going to be included as part of the appendix, as part of that presentation that's being provided, or that was provided that day. And so the criteria that were reviewed for this one was existing safety concerns regarding traffic and safe routes to school. And this information was broken down in those that are being provided, or what those concerns might be now, versus criteria 20 that looked at if there would be concerns in the future were more students to be on that school site. So if there was a concern right now, there was automatically a concern if you added more kids, but there were a couple of school sites that a new concern would be raised if you added more students to that school site. And so those are reflected there. Criteria 21 looked at transportation requirements for relocated students, and for all of the school sites with the exception of the charter schools, that is in play. Criteria 22 looked at alternatives uses identified for those closed school sites, and none of the district hasn't identified any alternative uses at this time, and so all had the same scoring there. And then that proximity to non-district schools that could capture students. And so this here just provides a summary of the number of proximate schools depending on the radius that was established by grade span. And again, the appendix would have the detailed breakdown that was provided as part of that presentation. And then criteria 24 looked at the benefit from net savings if a particular school site were closed, and so provides those costs and the ranking with regards to that. And then lastly, criteria 25 looked at the per student operating cost, again, excluding staff, and provided the ranking for that criteria. So any comments or questions on that meeting or that information? No? Okay. So December 16th, this meeting, the majority of it focused on a presentation answering the parking lot questions that we had been receiving throughout the meetings. And so it really is providing what the question was and then what the response was from the district or staff that responded to each one of those parking lot questions. And so all of those are listed there. There were a couple of questions that were outside of the committee's scope, but staff still provided information with regards to that. And so those are included there as well, so that that information is available to the board to know all of the questions that were asked by the committee and the information that was provided for that. Then after public comment, we really got into the conversation with regards to whether we were going to start. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Were the numbers on the net cost savings updated? Because they don't look the same as the ones that were in the criteria shared with us in the meeting.
I will double check. They should be the same exact thing, but I'll make a note to double check.
I didn't bring my folder tonight, but I think the one night I didn't.
Come
but
on.
I want to say that it was different numbers because
Okay,
I'm just looking at my school and I don't remember it being that high.
got it.
Like, wow.
You mean the cost per enrollment or the budget
No,
excluding
the net
staff?
cost savings.
Okay, sorry, looking at the wrong thing. Let me go. Got it.
I'm gonna look.
Like page after page after page.
In the very beginning of the report, was there language around the 7 through 12 proposal for Montgomery that included the expansion of the IB program? Because I didn't notice that.
It wasn't at the executive summary, it's in the back, but based on the comments that we received before, I'm just going to take that information that's in the back and copy it in the executive summary. In
it's
the
at the
executive
end.
summary, I was summarizing a little
Okay.
more, but
So it is there at the end?
yes.
Okay.
Are you okay, Andrea, or do you want to? You okay if we keep moving on, Andrea? You're going to keep? She's.
Andrew.
Are you okay if we keep going, or are you? No, no worries. All right, any other comments or questions on that one? Okay. So we were on December 16th, and again, it just all the the parking lot questions. And then after public comment, we were having a conversation with regards to starting the ranking, and there was really a decision by the committee that you wanted to consider alternative uses and what those were. And so that lists the alternative uses that we threw up onto the very large Post-it notes. There's a name for those things. And so we have all of those that are listed there. Just so that the board has that information as well with regards to the alternatives that all of you kind of considered and threw out and things for potential thought and consideration. And then we provided the matrices that we didn't end up discussing that night, but were handed out with regards to the total scoring for the schools. And this is the first time where we combined the charter schools with all of the other elementary schools, since the charter schools were also the same grade spans. And so you have the matrix for the elementary schools, for the middle schools, and then for the high schools. So any comments or questions on that? Okay. So January 17th is when the committee got together to have the group work with regards to trying to start with the ranking of the various schools. And so what this provides is some of the comments when Lisa asked the individual groups to stand up and explain why it was that they selected or what their process was for the selection of schools that each group had. And so those are listed by group A, B, C, and D. And then we have we took those rankings that then were provided that were on those poster boards with the stickies and assigned numbers to them effectively. And so what you see in figure 47 is if it was either ranked 1 or in the top tier, then that would be number 1. And so when you had tiers of schools, then you have more than one of the schools that's listed for number 1. So for example, Group A had Albert Biela, Brook Hill, and Steel Lane in one tier. And so each one of those got a number 1 because they were in the top tier. Then Abraham Lincoln and Helen Lehman were in the second tier, so they each got a 2. Luther Burbank was in a tier all its own, or was number 3. And then, let's see, Hidden Valley, James Marone, Proctor were in a 4th tier or 4th level. And so we gave those each a number 4. And then thought with that was really just to, again, try to help give you a way of looking at all of that data instead of just the stickies and names. And so that information is summarized there for you. And the text that goes along with it notes, as we had a conversation at this last meeting, we wanted to make sure that it was clear that not all the groups basically scored the same. Some did, 1 through 13 with numbers, some did some tiers. Some of the groups didn't include the charter schools. And so that's reflective in the blanks that are there. And so that information was compiled. And then you guys started to work on actually getting a consensus around what schools should be ranked in those tiers. And so the next couple of figures show what those were. So for the high schools, you had reached a consensus on 3 tiers. And the result of that meeting was that we were going to come back at the next meeting to actually rank those schools. And so we left the high schools there. For the middle schools, there was agreement on the ranking of the 4 middle schools at that meeting. And then for the elementary schools, there was agreement on which the top tier was, not any rankings or a second tier. And again, it was decided given that time that that would be brought back at the next meeting. So any comments or questions on that?
Yeah, sorry. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just wondering about the charts on 74 and 75. I am very thankfully not a math teacher, but I'm wondering if those averages actually have any meaning, considering the fact that the 4 groups didn't use the same numbering scale. I mean, my group did 1 through 8. We didn't have an 11 or a 10 in our numbers. And some people didn't get any higher than 4, right? So I'm just wondering the value of those numbers and the validity of creating those averages based on the fact that we basically started with 4 different data sets.
Yeah.
And we put together the information to, so that you'd have some look at that. And we did explain in the text the fact that that very thing happened then and everybody did it the same. But if there was a consensus that the committee would rather not show the totals and averages, it
Yeah,
was
I
just
was-
another way of looking at the data.
Sorry,
So-
gonna,
You're looking for a consensus on including this, or you said there was a consensus?
No, this was, we put that together and we shared it at the following meeting, but if there is a general consensus by the committee this evening that those totals and averages really, didn't inform the process that you went through and could be confusing for the reasons that you noted, then that's worth the conversation. I think, Ben, you were going to say something and then Janelle.
yeah, actually, I was gonna have a similar comment on these tables. I think it would be helpful in the text to add something to say that the figure 47 is added to help visualize the outputs from the group exercises. And I think I would agree with the proposal to remove the total and averages because they can be a little misleading to look at them this way. But I think it is useful to visualize, to have group A, B, C, D and those results as they're listed out, because that is a visual of those large post-it notes. So I think I would probably agree to remove the totals and averages. If that was a motion, then
Well, I would like
I
to
don't-
make a motion to remove the totals and the
Okay, so you up
averages
and down.
from figure 47.
Is that what you were going to do, Michelle? Anybody else, any comments or? Oh,
The only thing I want to go back on is that that was the data we used to determine tier 2 for elementary. So I don't know if we want to.
actually,
No.
we
No?
went back and used the ranking scores.
went back, yeah, for the tier
the
2, we
tier
did
2
go
for
back
the
to the rank
elementary.
score.
Okay. Excuse me.
There were a lot of scores and ranks going on. All right, so do we have a thumbs up to remove the totals and averages column or a thumbs down to keep? All right, so we'll pull those.
And with that, I think it'd be useful to add some text in there to say that the purpose of figure 47 was to help visualize the output from the groups just as a tool.
Got it. Any other questions or comments on that one? Okay. So then at our last meeting last week, January 27th, we reviewed the consensus that was reached at the prior meeting, and then we started looking and focusing on the high schools and the elementary schools, since those were the two that still needed ranking in order to occur. Had some broad conversation with regards to whether a second tier was, well, let me go back. So for the high schools, the decision was made not to rank them 1 and 2. The committee reached a consensus on just providing a top tier, that middle tier and the bottom tier for the board, for their consideration with regards to which schools. And so that determination was made. For the elementary schools, we had a very robust conversation with regards to a second tier. Whether it was needed given the board's request for a 311. Here is where we did include some of the additional concerns raised with regards to loss of programs with the closure of some of those schools. A number of different tier 2 options were raised, and we took a number of up and down votes, and many of those were turned down. And so ultimately what the committee determined and reached the consensus on was to use the total rank scores from those scoring sheets. I think it was figures 45, 46, 47, something around there. Actually, I wrote it down, figure 47. And those next 4 schools, there was some conversation with regards to whether charter schools were included. Some thought they should, sometimes they shouldn't. The consensus was ultimately to include it, and because they were included, we actually ended up picking the next 4 schools for that second tier for the elementary schools. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, just maybe making sure I'm understanding this correctly. So what was used was the total relative scores, which was the, oh, no, it wasn't.
It was the
Total
rank
rank
score.
scores. Got it, thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure that was clear, that was total relative versus total rank.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Janelle, did you raise your hand?
I had a quick question about the language around Cesar Chavez that was included there. It said Cesar Chavez was included. And then it said something about the committee. It's not meant to say the committee is not supportive of multilingual education. I think it was more specific to Cesar Chavez, that there's a little confusion about program versus site. And the committee really was saying that program should happen at another site, was what I was hearing, what I heard. And I don't know, maybe other people heard something different from the good discussion.
Does everybody understood it the same? So it was less about multilingual total, but about Cesar Chavez in particular and about that program. Okay. Got it. We'll make that. We can adjust that language. Then we started to talk about the alternatives. Oh, go ahead. No? I was on the bottom of page 78. Okay. So then we started talking about the alternatives. Lisa presented the information that was provided to at the town hall meetings, the dialogue, the survey results form, the survey that was placed for those community members that couldn't or wanted to also take the survey. And so it lists what those 4 scenarios were that the community was presented, and that was included as part of that survey, and the requirements for closures with regards to each one of those. And then the committee discussed what alternatives it wanted to present to the board. And the majority of them, the focus really was around wanting to maintain and keep all of the high schools open. And so the focus really was on this notion of a 7 through 12. And then the specific recommendations that all of you put together with regards to converting LC Allen to a High School, and then that would provide a natural feeder school for it, converting Montgomery High School to a grades 7 through 12, expanding the IB program to all grade levels, and closing Herbert Slater, converting Pioneer High School to a 7 through 12, and closing Comstock and keeping Santa Rosa Middle School open, converting Hilliard Comstock to middle school to a grades TK through 8, and the closure of Ridgeway Continuation High School, and either integrating that entire program into another school site or putting the kids, integrating them at the various school sites. But the notion was that the savings from the site from Ridgeway could be utilized elsewhere. And then aside from the 7 through 12 model was the idea of creating a multilingual academy by co-locating Cesar Chavez Language Academy and the Santa Rosa French American Charter School onto one site, and that would allow students in grades 7 and 8 to be able to potentially take classes in the other language.
The only change I would say is that if consideration is made to have Comstock go to a TK8, then Pioneer would not go 7-12 because then they would be in direct competition with each
And
other.
so there's a footnote at the bottom that says these are recommendations that could be adopted individually or in concert with one another, though some of the recommendations are mutually exclusive and cannot be jointly implemented. So the board has to look at that, and exactly that's like you can't do this and this, though some of the other ones could be, more than one could be done.
Looking at bullet 3, that convert Pioneer High School to 7-12, close Hilliard Comstock, keep Santa Rosa Middle School open. The full scenario was highlighting that Santa Rosa Middle School is a feeder to 3 high schools right now. And so adding that in there, I think that was part of the original on the board that we voted on to approve, that concept of it being continuing to be a feeder to Santa Rosa High School, continuing to feed LC Allen and Pioneer High School.
Okay.
And also the concept of if LC turned into a 7-12, this would maintain an option for those families to have a middle school option, not on a high school campus for their schools.
Okay. We didn't write all of that down, so.
Correct.
Well, even that evening
no.
on the board. So what
Oh.
we voted on only included this
Gotcha.
language. There was definitely, I remember some talk about that, but that
Yeah.
wasn't built into the actual recommendation that the committee voted on. That level of detail.
Well, can we add it?
I would say we can.
That was the logic. That was the,
Yeah.
that was the thinking. And I think for me, I want to provide the board members with the thinking along with the recommendation, because it just, I think it's more helpful for them to kind of understand the why.
So what about if you scroll down to, I don't want to, I would prefer not to adjust the recommendation since there was a vote on that language and a
Mhm.
motion in a second. But if you scroll down towards the bottom of page 80, there were other considerations that the committee wanted the board to make
Okay.
that weren't part of that recommendation, but things to include. And so what if we added another bullet point in that section? So if you can repeat what you said so we can make sure to.
Sure. So in the event that LC Allen and Pioneer convert to 7-12, closing Comstock and maintaining Santa Rosa Middle School as a feeder, as it currently is, to Santa Rosa High School, maintaining Santa Rosa High School's feeder, and then continuing to serve and support as a feeder for LC Allen and Pioneer. I know, I got a lot of words. If I had more time, I'd say less, right? I can type it up if you want, and is that helpful? Okay.
And while we're I should say, as we're adding this, do I have a consensus from the committee that yes, you're all okay with adding that additional language to the board? If I could get a.
Sure, the logic behind, sorry, we're gonna take this time. The logic behind the idea of, if we're converting the West Side High School to 7-12, Comstock's a dominant feeder for Pioneer and then also LC. So looking at Santa Rosa Middle School as the primary feeder for Santa Rosa High School, that is not on the list, high recommendation to close. it just made sense to maintain their feeder, not cut their feeder, but maintain a site that continues to feed all three high schools, Santa Rosa, Elsie Allen, and Pioneer. It currently does. About a third of the students are slated to go to Elsie, about a quarter are slated to go to Pioneer, and then the rest are slated to go to Santa Rosa. So maintaining that relationship while providing families with an opportunity, an option to stay in a comprehensive middle school.
I'm not clear on what it is that you're saying, and I don't remember us having a conversation of maintaining Santa Rosa Middle School to go and be the feeder for those other schools. I don't remember that part of the conversation.
I had just stated the facts as they are today, that it is a feeder school for those three schools. And so I was just making that point that it is already a feeder school for those three high schools. So that just wouldn't change if it were still open.
So Santa Rosa Middle School is currently a feeder for Pioneer, Elsie Allen, and Santa Rosa High School.
Correct.
And so the note that you are requesting, or we're looking to add, is that with the conversion of Pioneer and the closure of Comstock, Santa Rosa Middle School remains open and would still feed to all three of those high schools versus it being used just to feed to one high school, whichever high school that might be.
Correct.
Okay. So I think the big picture is Santa Rosa Middle School remains open and
Just
feeds.
clarification, if Pioneer is 7 through 12, Santa Rosa Middle would not feed into Pioneer because Pioneer would already be a 7 through 12. Elsie Allen, if it was to go to a 7 through 12, also would not feed from Santa Rosa Middle. They'd already be their own feeder.
I think the idea was that we acknowledged if you make, so for instance, if you made those two 712s, because we didn't put it as a bullet point, you're right. But the idea is that because the bullet point exists, that if you make Elsie a 712 and Pioneer a 712, right now the feeder for both of those schools is only Comstock. So if you take all the 7th and 8th graders and you're putting the kids that are currently at Comstock and some are at CCLA, they're feeding Elsie. There is no middle school anymore. So it was an and, it was just that if you acknowledge you're making two 712s, those kids came from somewhere. Where did they come from? They all came from Comstock. So then Comstock's not closed, but it would be empty. It would be an empty site. And she was saying that if a parent didn't want to be on a 712 on either one, Santa Rosa would offer a centralized downtown option, still go to feed any of our high schools. But that wasn't it's a separate, it wasn't connected to that original bullet point. She's adding that concept that.
So just when all of this is done, whatever the new configuration is, there would be new boundaries drawn up. So I think that would be up to the board as part of that conversation around boundaries and what those feeder patterns would look like based on the number of students that live in a particular area.
So given that, or do you still?
I was just going to say, for the parents that don't want their kids to go to 712, it's an option to have that middle school and kind of in the heart of Santa Rosa available to most people.
Okay, so these words it's messy, but so currently Santa Rosa Middle School feeds into Pioneer, Santa Rosa Heights, and Elsie Allen. If any of those three high schools convert to a 712, then Santa Rosa Middle School would remain a feeder to the other remaining high school that isn't a 712. And that gives parents the ability who don't want their kids in a 712 to still have a middle school, high school configuration. No? Okay.
So in our districts that allows for uh, school choice transferring, yes, the lines would be redrawn if we, this is going to happen, we know that. So maybe technically there wouldn't be a need for, I don't know if there would, I don't know if the lines would include someone who goes to Santa Rosa Middle School and then is districted for Pioneer High School. But I know currently that's the case. So that was my point, is that one, currently it's now the case, and to Melissa's point, in a district where we can transfer and families have choice, it provides them a comprehensive middle school choice while still feeding to Pioneer or LC or Santa Rosa. Does that make sense?
This is getting kind of complicated. So I'm wondering, what I'm hearing is that people want to allow parents to have a choice to send their kids to a middle school, even if the high schools go to the 7-12 configuration. Do you think that, could we just provide that to the board? Say, consider allowing parents to have that choice, like consider a configuration where parents would have a choice to send their kids to a middle school if, if instead of a 7-12, if they wanted, and let them work out the boundaries? Because I think
Yeah, no, I'm not suggesting to figure out the boundaries, but I think we currently they already have that choice. So that would be, parents already have the choice to send their kid to transfer to any middle school.
And that wouldn't change with
Yeah.
any of this.
Right.
So
Yeah, can I clarify? That's actually board policy, which is probably outside of the purview of the committee when we think of it in that way. Just being careful about adding information as far as a recommendation and getting into the realm of board policy other than as we would like you to keep this, something around those lines.
I am just asking for clarification in terms of what we are agendized to do here. And we finished our recommendations last week. This is a report. And although I do remember Allison and Ross talking about this, I don't think it was ever a large group conversation that made it onto any of the doodle pads. And, and so I'm just wondering if we really can I don't think we can add it at this time because it's not part of the agenda. Just me being pragmatic all over again.
And that is definitely why I was noting it. I wouldn't add it as part of the official recommendation because those were set, those were motion, second, voted on with that respect. So let it go. Okay. All right. Any other comments or edits on that section? All right. So then the recommendations as they stand, and then again, the additional considerations that all of you discussed were added there towards the end as a bullet point or as bullet points, so that the board has the benefit of that conversation and the, concerns and different things that you really wanted the board to consider, from not closing 3 middle schools on the west side, nor closing schools that were proximate or that were neighbor schools to each other. Not considering not closing Biella and Lincoln, both because of the high concentration of students with disabilities that are at those school sites and the fact that they're walking schools. If a high school is closed, providing priority and support to those students to make sure that they stay on track to graduate and achieve their post-secondary goals. The notion of ensuring that the district is creating and highlighting its program offerings at the various school sites in order to try to retain and attract staff, students, and families. And then the consideration of the non-renewal of non-district sponsored charter schools. And I just put the footnote with regards to what the law allows with regards to the board doing that. And so that was everything that was discussed at that last meeting. Okay.
Yeah, just a comment. I don't know, Lisa, this may not need to go in here. It might just be in the logistics of it. But currently, so we have the recommendation here to consider looking at CCLA and SRFX moving on to one campus. There's no campus that would fit the two of them, just student population wise at this point. But maybe that's a logistic that we don't need to, you know, as a standalone point, it's interesting, but logistically, it couldn't be done on a site together right now. I don't know if that needs to be clarified, the sizes.
I proposed the concept and I didn't say one site, I said two sites. It says one site, that they be moved to one site, but when I talked about it last time, I suggested that at one site, you'd have a K through 4, and on the Santa Rosa Middle School campus, you'd have a 5 through 8. So I suggested splitting them into a primary and an upper grade. So two sites, not one site. You can't fit them onto one site.
So I think that's a logistics thing that I think the intent is understood as far as co-locating what.
And hold on, you two have your book.
Russ, I was the one who actually was proposing the language academy with 2-on-1 because that was on my group's board. And so when we were doing the alternatives, I was the one that put that on the board. It may have been different than yours, but it was to merge both of them onto one site as a language academy.
And I think I remember what you were talking about, Ross, with regards to splitting it up. And we just got into the conversation about taking a charter school and splitting it up into multiple sites could be problematic. The board has to have a finding. And so we all ended up with this.
Okay,
notion
so that's
of-
where I got confused, whether
Yeah.
I saw the one site versus two sites. And I know the comment was made couple of times, there's too many kids to put them all onto one site. I know, Lisa, you're saying there's a site, they could all go on the same site. So it sounds like it's resolved.
I'd like to point out that we don't know what sites the board will choose, so we don't know what sites are empty. So it's impossible for us to say right here, right now in this room, that no sites will hold both schools, because that has not yet been decided.
All right. Any other comments or questions on the last meeting? All right. And then for this meeting, you saw it was all highlighted in yellow. It was just the notion of, this is what the committee was doing for today. And I think the only other thing that I was proposing to add was effectively saying that the purpose of the meeting was to review the draft report. I noted that after public comment, Dr. Castro provided additional information regarding the International Baccalaureate program and whether it could be moved, that there is the potential for moving it based on criteria. And I'll get a copy of the letter to make sure I have the words right, that the district staff is in contact with the International Baccalaureate program regarding submitting the necessary documentation to transfer the program, should the board determine that Montgomery will be closed, and should it determine that it wants to continue the program, because those two things are the board's purview. And then I noted that Dr. Castro provided the letter to the committee, or the document. And so I was proposing to add that language, and then the rest of it with regards to that we walked through the various sections, talked about it, and got approval from the committee to finalize the report and present it to the board.
Yeah, just a clarification. So would it include this document then?
Yeah,
in
so
the report as an
we can put a
attachment?
note that it's, an appendix A as part of the, tonight's meeting information. So, yeah. So does that sound good as an addition with regards to what was there before? All right. Okay. So and then The appendix, really for each meeting, you see that there's kind of a tab or a front sheet, and we will include the meeting agenda, the meeting minutes, and the presentations that were provided at that time. So anybody who picks up the report basically has everything that all of you guys saw. And as well as at the beginning of the report you saw, there was also the link, so they could also just go to the board website and download all of that information as well. And so that's what will get added to that appendix at the end. Right. So, yeah.
Will we be voting on this then?
Yes. So I was going to ask, is there any other general comments, feedback, anything we missed, anything that we didn't touch upon? And then, yes.
I'd like to say something before the vote. I understand that joining this committee was an agreement to explore school closure, but at this point, given what I now know about the process, I cannot in good conscience vote to approve this report. After many months of meetings, I do not believe this committee has been given enough information to make a recommendation to the board. We have not been given current enrollment, attendance, or capacity numbers, clear information about how programs would be moved, alternate uses for sites, if public-private partnerships on our campuses could be a cost-saving option, what cuts will be made at the district office, cost savings and logistics of the alternative scenarios, such as 7 through 12 schools, or any meaningful feedback from families regarding why they choose our schools, why they leave our schools, and what they will do if the proposed scenarios come to pass. Without greater transparency, accurate data, and nuanced analysis of scenarios and outcomes that take into account exactly how much money will be saved and where, we are being asked to make this recommendation in a vacuum, and I don't believe it is appropriate, given the negative impact it will have on our community. This focus on fiscal austerity will be at the expense of marginalized populations that instead are in need of the most support. After much thought, I do not believe that closing schools is the right solution to our district's budgetary problems at this time, and so I will abstain from this vote.
And just to be clear, it's not a vote as in, 7 ayes, no nays. We're really just looking for a thumbs up to give us authority to finalize it based on incorporating the comments that we had this evening, and then provide that to staff so they can provide it to the board. Right. So any other questions, comments, edits from anyone on the committee? All right. So just looking for a general thumbs up and a consensus to make the edits that we discussed this evening and finalize the report. So thumbs up with a yes, you can live with it. Thumbs down if. All right. Thank you. So we will finalize it and get this, add all of the appendices, and get it over to the district so they can provide it to the board. And yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, next steps.
The draft that was attached to tonight's agenda, it has been attached to the board agenda for Wednesday as a preview. As soon as we have all of this finalized, it will be added, and we'll be finalizing the presentation, which will be uploaded as well. So that meeting will be the public hearing as well as the presentation in the South Gym here at Santa Rosa High at 5:30 on Wednesday, February 5th. The board will also be holding study sessions to review information based on where they want to go with exploring different options within the report and the recommendations. And again, the final decision we expect on February 19th, with information out to families as soon as possible after that, with transfer window information and things of that nature. So I just want to say thank you so much to all of you. I know that this has been really difficult. It's been a heavy weight on your shoulders, as it is on all of ours. And I really, really appreciate the time and your professionalism. Just thank you for your service.
Thank you. And with that, we'll adjourn. Thank you.